My name is Josh Breslow, and I want to get you right back into the headlines here as we know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is en route to the U.S. right now for a face-to-face meeting with President Trump at the White House as tensions grow there between the U.S. and Iran. Netanyahu departed from Israel sometime after noon local time today and is expected to meet with President Trump tomorrow. You can see some of the posts here on social media as he was departing. It says, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, I am now leaving for the United States for my 7th trip to meet with President Trump since he was elected for a second term. This, of course, does not include his unforgettable visit to Israel and his speech in the Knesset. They go on to say, I think these reflect the unique closeness of the extraordinary relationship that we have with the United States, that I personally have with the president, that the state of Israel has with the United States, unprecedented in our history. There's also photos there that you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen. On this trip, we will discuss a range of issues, Gaza, the region, but of course, first and foremost, the negotiations with Iran. Now, the Prime Minister's office goes on to say, I will present to the president our outlook regarding the principles of these negotiations, the essential principles which, in my opinion, are important not only to Israel, but to everyone around the world who wants peace and security in the Middle East. A good friend of the show here, Jonathan Sayeh, is an Iran analyst there at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, joining us now to talk much more about all of this. Jonathan, thank you so much, as always, for being here with us.
Good morning, Josh. It's great to be with you again.
And of course, we saw in those tweets there, those X posts from Netanyahu's office, the Prime Minister's office in Israel, that he kind of laid out what the discussion is going to be about. But as you and I have discussed here in the past, the big topic likely to be the situation there with Iran.
It certainly is. So the condition here is for Jerusalem and Washington to harmonize their stance on Iran, given that these are the only two nation states that have actually struck targets within the Islamic Republic in the last few years. So that relationship is crucial. If there were to be a military strike, we want to make sure that the only ally in the region who actually has military experience in the field is really connected with. But it also comes at a backdrop of different regional allies, quote unquote, around the Persian Gulf that have been trying to really push against an attack against the Islamic Republic. I'm thinking Turkey and Qatar, these Muslim Brotherhood-backed states. And we're under a condition where it seems like our interests are not fully aligned with some of our allies in the region. And so here we have to ensure that we are really capitalizing on ties with countries that share the same threats as we do. Because, of course, these Muslim Brotherhood-backed states are actually benefiting from the Islamic Republic staying in place.
And what's interesting is we know that that trip was actually set for later on this month. I believe it was sometime around February 18th. Of course, tomorrow is February 11th. Why? Really, what does it tell us, I should say, about the fact that he moved up that trip to have it sooner rather than later?
The change evidently signals urgency. Time is of essence because the whole idea about striking Iran in this time frame is because of the ongoing momentum on the ground. This is a regime that has killed tens of thousands of unarmed protesters. So, of course, it is internally inherently illegitimate. So any attack would have to be harmonized with the Iranian population on the ground. And really delaying this would risk us losing that population that is inherently, of course, pro-America. So time is really of essence, and the momentum has not died. We've seen different protests still taking place. We saw thousands march in the southwest of the country in remembering some of the protesters that have been killed. Of course, students are still protesting. Strikes are still ongoing. So life is not back to normal, and all eyes are really looking at Washington and Jerusalem as to how this attack could theoretically aid the civic movement.
As far as the end of the meeting here, when we find out exactly what happens, what would be kind of a win for Netanyahu, and what happens if he doesn't, quote unquote, win, so to speak, and Washington and Jerusalem there don't agree?
There's a lot on the table, and we still don't exactly know what are the pillars that Washington and Tehran are negotiating over. Of course, this administration has been pushing for talks to go beyond the nuclear file actually talking about ballistic missiles and terror proxies. And that's something that Jerusalem has also signaled its willingness to. It's a deal that Israel would support. But the challenge there is the Islamic Republic, it's not going to negotiate over missiles or terror proxies. Its militia financing is a gray area. It is hard to enforce anyway. We don't know what international body could actually oversee the process of ensuring that the Islamic Republic is not funding terrorists. With the ballistic missiles, Tehran views its missiles as an existential threat if it were to remove them. In their perspective, given that they don't really have an air force, what has really kept them in place is their ballistic missiles. So for them to negotiate over that would be really surprising. If we're looking at a context where it's going to be a deal limited to nuclear, in that context, probably that would not be beneficial to really, Israel or many other countries in the region, because of course this regime has killed many people. It's not really the time for negotiations, but if so, we need to ensure that the deal actually is comprehensive.
And that brings up a good point, because we know we saw the talks that took place just a few days ago there over in Oman. And what's interesting is it seemed as though those talks weren't going to happen, as there was some disagreement about the venue itself, the format of the meeting. So what do you see as the future? Are there concerns that a deal may not happen?
The two factors you brought up are crucial, and they really are a great display of Tehran's tactics. They always want to stall negotiations, drag out talks as much as they can, using similar incidents, as you mentioned, delaying the talk itself, changing a venue, first signaling that they're going to communicate directly with Washington, then suggesting that they need intermediaries. So all these, again, sign to the fact that Tehran is trying to buy time. And that is because, one, that would delay a potential attack, and that would, talks with the U.S. also legitimize the regime. And it sends the real wrong message to dissidents inside the country. So again, when we're looking at Tehran's tactic, we've seen them do exactly this during the May 2025 negotiations. But we have to keep in mind, even though talks were technically ongoing, Washington still abided by its deadline. It said after a few months, if we were failed to see anything materialize, we would greenlight an attack, and they did in June 2025. So we have no reason to think this time would be any different. If anything, given the military buildup and given the recent wave of crackdowns, and given that Europe has actually designated IRGC as a terrorist group, we're really headed towards a different direction. Tehran knows that all options are on the table.
As far as others in the region, why are they maybe paying very close attention to what happens, not just the meeting between Trump and Netanyahu, but essentially the tensions there between the U.S. and Iran? Why is that so important to the region as a whole?
When we talk about the Middle East, we're seeing different alliances form. One, as I mentioned, is the Muslim Brotherhood states, Turkey and Qatar. So these two countries specifically are benefiting from the Islamic Republic staying in place because they finance the same terror groups, Hamas being one of them. They enable one another's money laundering operations, and the cooperation goes on. Then you have Saudi Arabia, of course, that really has been sending contradictory messages. On one hand, they are to an extent afraid of an Islamic Republic that is emboldened, that could attack Saudi Arabia using missiles, or could target Saudi Arabia using its proxies. So from their perspective, as long as there is a deal that would ensure those two things for them, they don't mind if the Islamic Republic stays in place. Ultimately, they do not want to see regime collapse in Iran because they don't want to have another competitor in the region. They want to be the ones that are dominating it. So again, you look at all these different countries around the Persian Gulf and the Middle East, all of them have an incentive to keep the Islamic Republic in place. And that really clashes with the interest of the United States, given that this is a regime that is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They sought to assassinate the president, and they abduct Americans on U.S. soil.
Jonathan, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us here. Anything we missed that you want to make sure to mention here before I let you go?
I think we covered all the major themes, and everything seems to be in motion right now. The military buildup is there, coordination with allies is actually there, and it seems like the talks are not really materializing, and Tehran is not providing any concessions. So really, the next stages are pivotal as to whether Washington will, in fact, follow through on its threats against the Islamic Republic and aid the protest movement inside Iran.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much, as always, for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And as we mentioned, that meeting between Netanyahu and Trump expected to happen tomorrow. We know that Netanyahu already en route there, so we'll of course have coverage of all of that. Any remarks, if there is a joint news conference, you can watch that in full, commercial free here as always on Live Now from Fox.